Hi, everyone. I know there were some questions about the worksheet I sent out to the team. So I wanted to go over and make a video of an example of what we want to do with conversations with me and Brent. We are going to use the Northeast as an example since I just got off the phone with Andy on this. So let's assume you're an RD and you have New York City and Boston. We know that they're both big markets, and the fundamental question is, do we want to have teams in those markets? And if we do, what do we want them to look at? Let's first look at Boston and look at the information we have. So we know we have the region, we have the market, and this is not necessarily New York City proper. This is the area surrounding New York City, the broader market. We also know the number of current sales reps. This doesn't include DARs. This just includes Metro reps, generalist reps, and Tarco reps that are in that market. And then we have all the potential, the number of core cases and Tarco cases from IMS, the revenue we have for Right in each core and Tarco, and the number of Right cases and Tarco cases we have. And then we also have what the index value is. So you can see here, New York City, this big metro area, this big, MSA, which includes the suburbs, has an index of about 12,500. So that's about 12 to 13 people is what the index says we should have there. And then we have these two factors. What this tells us is how penetrated we are compared to the national average. So what this says is New York, the greater New York market, is penetrated at about 92% of the national average, which means we're selling a little bit less there than the national average, about $1.1 million less there than based on the potential number of cases IMS tells us are in New York, what we would get. This is just for informational purposes. This isn't passing any judgment. This is just meant to let you know, is this a market that we're getting most of the share in, or we're getting a lot of share in, or that we want to grow by capturing more share by growing the market, whatever that happens to be. Again, it's just informational. So now let's look at New York City, and we need to answer the question, do we want to have a team? And if so, what could we imagine that would be? So here's the greater New York City area. And what I did is I identified this area, which is basically, in my opinion, the areas that get New York City TV stations, or use New York City airports, or root for New York City football teams, or whatever that happens to be. Obviously, New Jersey isn't part of New York, and Connecticut isn't part of New York, but for our purposes, they're kind of in that same market. So when we think of this, we know that it had an index of 12,500, and we want to know, A, do we want a team, and what could we imagine that team looks like? So if we think about this geography, we go back to the sheet, and yes, we decide this is what you guys will answer, but in this case, for example, let's say we decided, yes, we want a team. So we would put a Y there. And then the question is, in a preliminary manner, totally non-binding, what would that team look like? Remember, a team cannot be larger than 5. We know from psychological studies and stuff like that, if a team's larger than 5, it'll break down. So obviously in New York City, we have many more than 5. We have to break it down. It's not a do you want to, it's a you have to, how would you do that? So now let's look at how, if we've decided we wanted a team, how we. So in New York, and obviously Andy has the final say on this, I'm just imagining what could be said for illustration purposes. We might say, you know what, on Long Island, I need 3 people. Of those 13 people, I want one team of 3 people on Long Island. I want one team of 4 people in Manhattan. I want one team of 2 people in Westchester County and Connecticut. I want 3 people in North Jersey, and then I want a solo person in Central Jersey. And when I think about my 13 people in the greater New York area, 12 to 13 people, I definitely want teams. And this is kind of how it would look. So I'd have 3 people on Long Island, 4 in Manhattan, 2 in Westchester, 3 in North Jersey, and 1 person in Central Jersey. Again, that's not binding. We're going to go through all this in much more detail where you'll be able to dig into the maps and all those things when we get to Salt Lake City. But this is just to give me and Rebecca and the team a sense for the direction we want to go in. Now let's look at Boston. Very similar. Here's Boston. Here's kind of the Boston MSA. Who are the people who get Boston TV stations? If you look at it, again, Boston has currently 4 headcount, and the index says it should have 3,500, so between 3 and 4. So you can see the 4 headcount there, and the index is right there, 3,500. You can see Boston is over-penetrated. So in New York, we were getting a little bit less in revenue than we would expect on average. In Boston, we're getting a little bit more. So here we might say, yes, we want a team. And then again, look at this area and say, what could that team look like? And again, obviously, this is Andy's decision, but just for illustration purposes, I might say, I want one person, one solo person, kind of in the northern part of Boston. And maybe, again, this is not binding. Maybe this person would go as far south as Lynn and kind of right around here and up through Lowell and Manchester and all points north. So kind of this area would be a solo person. I don't have to draw that now. I just have to have a sense of, yeah, one person should be up in that area. And then a team of 3 should be everywhere else. So kind of this part and south. And I'm going to write that down for Andrew. One person in northern Boston and New Hampshire, 3 people for the rest of Boston and South Shore. Again, these are not binding. We can change these. We can edit these. We'll be doing that a lot in Salt Lake City. We're planning on having multiple hours with each of you to dig into the maps to figure out what we want to do as you align your territories. But all this is this is giving me a sense as I start of A, what are the major markets we want to create teams for? And then B, broadly speaking, where would you want those teams? How would that look? And then I'll be able to take that and give us a good starting point. I hope this was helpful. I just wanted to give you something of a reference so we don't have to play phone tag and you don't have to wait for me to get back to you so you can get started. And obviously, if you look at this and you still need help, I'm always here. Please feel free to give me a call, but I just wanted to give you another resource you could use.